So I think, Brendan, that she said very clearly something that she believes, that Mike Pence believes. She said, I do believe very strongly that America's democracy is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. But I wonder, in this world where there are people who seem to believe that it's only a legitimate election when their candidate wins, how do we get to that place? How do people who care about democracy fight for it and get to the other side of what we saw 4 years ago? Because we aren't there yet.
Yeah, I mean, it takes leadership, I should say, from federal leaders. Hakeem Jeffries made that same point when he gave his remarks before handing the speaker's gavel over to Mike Johnson. You can't just love your country when your side wins. And I think, that's something that we saw. Look, nobody envies what Vice President Harris had to do today. That must have been really tough. Of course, she's not the first vice president to have to do that. That's really hard, but it's the beauty of our system that we do stand up there and do that in this way. It's funny, a couple of the producers were asking me earlier if I had been on the floor for one of these when I was on the Hill. And honestly, I couldn't remember because these things were not memorable previously. They were quick. They weren't a big thing. And I think, if there is any, I don't know if there's a silver lining, but hopefully what we can take from what happened 4 years ago is that we're never going to allow something like that to happen again. And we cherish a little bit more the transfer of power that we do have here and take it much more seriously. And I'll say that for both parties. As we know, Democrats over the years have certainly not in the way of 4 years ago, but have objected to the results during that process. So hopefully everybody takes it more seriously now. But again, it takes real leadership from the people in power who have real voices to communicate that.
And I think you're in the majority. Besides last time, I don't think I remember a certification except because I spent 36 days in Tallahassee in 2000. I remember the 2001 and watching Al Gore stand up there and certify the election for George W. Bush. But, Michael, let's talk about Kamala Harris. We mentioned after the certification that she allowed the Republicans to stand and cheer when the final announcement was made about the electoral count. Can't be easy. Tough fought campaign. She has not said anything except that she's going to continue to be active. Does she have a political future?
She does. I think she should play a central role in the future of the party, not as a candidate, but as an outside advisor who helps sort of guide along the next generation, the Hakeem Jeffries of the world and others. She can also be helpful in raising money. She has this incredibly large database of donors in California that our next leadership for the party will need for the next 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and 8 years. And so she has a role, not as a candidate, but as an advisor.
Well, she certainly showed, at least during that particular situation, she could raise money. So we'll see where that goes. We just got word from our folks on the Hill, Brendan, that 3 times Speaker Johnson was asked today, maybe it was more, but by our count, Garrett, you can break in if I'm wrong here. He was asked about pardons, potential pardons for January 6th rioters, and wouldn't answer the question. Should he be answering that question, first of all, Brendan, but also what are you going to be watching for in terms of the decision that Donald Trump is going to make? He has certainly indicated he is open to pardons.
Yeah, I am fully expecting him to issue those pardons, and I don't expect a whole lot of resistance. I mean, Donald Trump has completely rewritten the history of that event for a certain segment of the population, and that segment of the population is the one that a lot of Republican elected officials care about. Mike Johnson was among the chorus of people 4 years ago saying that everybody there needed to be held accountable. But, that position has been brushed aside by him and just about everybody else back then. I don't think anybody will say they condone what happened that day. But Donald Trump has been so relentless in saying that those people were just patriots trying to express their constitutional First Amendment views, that there's just really very little upside for them to fight back. I mean, Donald Trump has won that argument. He's going to do this, and I can't imagine there'll be very many people who will stand up to him. It's looking at that image, it's maddening. I mean, a place that I worked for many years in a building that I cherish, and frankly, every American should cherish. It's completely shameful. You would hope that these people, this was not just an attack on their democracy. It was an attack on their workplace, an attack on them. And I think it just speaks to the power that Donald Trump has over a lot of people. that he's been able to whitewash what happened there to a point that everybody's basically receding to his position and just going to look the other way when this ultimately does happen.